Hey, so welcome back, everyone. I know it's been a while. It's kind of hard for me to upload, episodes every now and then. Things have just gone super busy, and it's just tough, man. Like, I don't know how motherfuckers do it, man. When they try to handle, having a girlfriend, spending time with her, going to the gym, going to work, and doing other family obligations and stuff, man. It's tough, man. I don't know how people do it. It's like, have you ever watched those motivational videos where it's just this unrealistic expectation of someone doing everything before 8 a.m. It's like there was this one video I watched, man. It was about this one guy who wakes up at 8 o'clock and he's thinks he's the shit. Wakes up at 8 o'clock, brushes his teeth with his snapback on and heads to the shower, then heads to the gym. I don't know, man. And it kind of projects that fake lifestyle type of thing. It's classic stuff, man. Yeah, I'm not like that. I'm not like, we know where people like The Rock would say they would wake up at 4 a.m. every single day and sleep at 1 o'clock and still get their workout in and do a million things every single day. I need my 8 hours. I'm not a Gary Vee. I'm not The Rock. I'm not a Kevin Hart. I'm just me, right? And unfortunately, man, it's just like I said, there's so much things that you have to do, and unfortunately, something has to take a step back. And honestly, one thing that happened was the show. So like I said, I'm back at it. I need to really just build that time in there, right? To really just focus on that show. So like I said, I'm not perfect. I'm gonna keep trying to do this. No excuses, and just fucking roast me for it. But there is just a specific topic that I do want to talk about. And that's just the disconnect between regular people from the elites. And this is, if you don't know what I'm talking about, this is what I mean by elites. So elites are those that work on establishing the culture of society. So think of news writers, politicians, not local level politicians, but high level politicians, those in parliament, or those in the Senate, or if you're in the States, those in Congress, essentially. Journalists and people working for big business. Those are what I see or consider establishments. So those that establish the culture. But in this case here, just for a very specific case, I want to focus on just a couple of people. Celebrities, critics, and journalists. And what really inspired me to make this video was when I was finished watching Venom 2. And honestly, I'll give you a legit version, a dumbass average Joe version, is that Venom 2 is actually pretty good. It was a bit underwhelming It wasn't as good as Venom 1, in my opinion, but Venom 2 was just a solid good movie. I liked it, It was short, it was sleek, it was to the point, and you knew what you're setting up to the minute that you got into the film. And like I said, it's a lot of pow, cheap humor, Venom doing his thing. And like I said, if you're not so much of an academic or so much of an artist, then I recommend you watch this movie for just it being a good time. Like I said, the movie Fauci came out, and I was like, okay, this looks interesting. Let me check it out. But first, let me check the reviews to see what they say. And let's say that the reviews are, let's say, very, very different from what I've seen. Okay, so let's give an example of what's going on here. So on Metacritic, the critics gave it a 70. So let's back up again. For those who don't know what Metacritic is a review website. So they review movies and games, as far as I know. And they always split it into two things, the professional reviewer score and a user score. So people like me, the average Joe, who doesn't review movies for a living. They just go there to have fun and see if it's and just have a good time. Right? They don't have the artistic kind of sense that professional critics do in terms of reviewing films, or any sort of professional criteria that they're judging a movie by. But yeah, I went to the reviews to see how the Fauci movie went, and what happened was that the critics gave it a 70, which in green means good, with generally many positive reviews. But the user score, however, gave it a 0.2. Let me repeat that. The critics gave it a 70. So, the super smart people, the ultra woke, those who were super progressive, they gave this a 70. So these professional reviewers who know what they're talking about. But the average user gave it a 0.2. So there's clearly a discrepancy here. Like, you must be super fucking blind to not see that. It's just there, right? Like, how can the critics who are professional give it such a high score, and then the average user give it a 0.2? And to be honest, it's actually one of the lowest like scores I've seen on a documentary. There's clearly some sort of disconnect between those that establish the culture and that are educated and, you know, that basically tell us what to do, and the average Joes like me and you who just go to work and don't think about a lot of complicated shit in the way that, you know, the elites do. But you know what? I want to see what the critics have to say about the Fauci movie. So, regardless of your political leanings or affiliations, Fauci is an education on what civil service looks like, and Dr. Anthony Fauci leads the pack. Here's another one by CNN. Fauci makes no pretense about where its sentiments lie, flouting a figure whose critics have seemingly twisted his image beyond recognition in their attempts to demonize him. See, I mean, just look and notice how like these professional critics gave a generally positive review for this film. Now, I want to see what the users have to say. This is from some user called Hashman95. It's like, what went through this dude's head, or this individual's head, right? You know, because, you know, gender doesn't exist anymore. You know, everything's a spectrum. What did this individual who chooses to identify as Hashman94 online, where do you come up with this stuff? Like, do you just one day just look at like toast or something, or like you know those like things at McDonald's, like those like hash browns, and you're just like, fuck it, man, I love eating hash browns. I'm assuming I'm a man. Let's just name myself Hashman, then put my date of birth, which is 94. So, yeah, there you go, Hashman94. It's just like, these names, man, like they're so creative. And okay, so let me read the review. This is just blatant propaganda! Exclamation mark! So you know this guy's very angry. This really ground my gears. Okay, you know, English major. Ellipses, dot, period. This is worse than mainstream news! Exclamation mark! And all capital letters. Do not watch. Waste your time on something else. Just like Justin Bieber's pod reel. That's a better use of your time. It's crazy how I didn't even know Justin Bieber had a pod reroll. But if you notice the kind of the critique from Hashman94 is that this individual did not like this movie. Did not like it at all. Now, I wanted to see another review from Nikos with a capital C and a capital C. Nico CC. Okay, here we go. It really is unfortunate that my family and I had to escape communism to be confronted with the threat of it here in the US in 2021. We are very familiar with propaganda, and this documentary is just that, propaganda. Fauci is celebrated in this piece even though he's a paid political actor more than he is a doctor, and he's been wrong / lied just about everything. He hasn't practiced medicine in over 20 years, and he's part of the establishment. Like I said, the establishment, the elites, things like that. And if anyone thinks that the establishment cares about your well-being, you're fooled and you will deserve your fate. Because just like the people under the Soviet Union who were so willing to give up their liberties for a bit of safety, you will end up like them, getting neither liberty or safety but death and oppression. I urge everyone to read Alexander Solzhenitsyn's Live Not by Lies. Did I say that right? Alexander Solzhenitsyn? Alexander Solzhenitsyn. The only, like, I've never actually read his name. Like, I've only like listened to Jordan Peterson ever say Alexander Solzhenitsyn. Fuck. Alexander Solzhenitsyn. There, I butchered it. This documentary is a lie. Do not accept it. So clearly, two different reviews from the critics and two different reviews from the users. But why is there such a big kind of, gap in terms of how it was received by the critics and how it was received by the users? I'm not too sure what the answer actually is, though. But I can only speculate. I think the answer is this. The reviewers and the average users are living in different aspects of society, while the elites are living in a different aspect based on their economic position. And I think while you're in a space of determining, cultures, such as, being part of a major news network or working for super, rich millionaires and billionaires, and being around journalists, I think that you are surrounded by people who think like you. And the only place I can think of mine immediately off the top of my head that is very good at determining culture is Hollywood. And Hollywood is known to be very progressive in its thinking. And therefore their views on issues are more left-leaning in comparison to the average person. And let's just give some context here, okay? I am not a Marxist. I don't believe in Karl Marx. I don't advocate for Karl Marx. I'm not a communist per se. I'm a capitalist. I studied economics. I kind of understand like the economic theory behind socialism and communism and capitalism. But I will say this though, as an admission to one thing. Karl Marx was right about one thing, though, and that is this. Those in economic positions live different realities, and therefore affects their outlook on life. Also, one of the biggest divides in society is not necessarily by culture, but more or less by economic standing. Especially in the West, like you can have a lot of common with say, someone of a different skin color in the same economic position than someone of the same skin color in an entirely different economic position. That's just the way our society, as of right now, functions. So think about it this way. People in Hollywood are rich as fuck. And it's also kind of safe to say that those who, those professional critics, those journalists, those who work for big, news organizations, they're paid really, really well. They're in a pretty good position that they have time to think about these things. They watch movies for a living, they critique stuff, right? And then you have the average, blue collar worker, or even the average white collar worker, like for example myself, that that aren't that rich, that go to work, do the 9 to 5, 8 to 4, they come in, they put in their 8 hours, and they don't have time to think about everything wrong with society, because at the end of the day, I'm thinking about my next paycheck. Where's that going to go to? If I have investments, if I have a mortgage, good luck with that, especially in Vancouver. If I have to pay rent, if I have to pay for food, how much money do I have left over? I don't have time, honestly. Like, there's not enough mental real estate in my head to really care about these. But all it's fucked up about all those oppression issues. Being woke, keeping up with this like whole progressive movement. I just want to go there, get my job done, and go home and chill. I think that's the dichotomy, right? That's kind of like the difference, is that ultimately, if you're really rich, you have time and basically leverage to hire, people to clean the house. You got time for people to drive. You don't have to go to work a lot. You can rely on your dividends, on your investments to do other things in life. While the average person, on the other hand, doesn't have that liberty, right? They go to work for 8 hours, even longer if they have to commute back and forth. They have to cook for themselves. They have to clean for their own, place of living. They have to pay bills, right? And money is an issue. And like, have you seen this whole Demi Lovato thing? Demi Lovato says that, it's offensive to aliens to call them aliens. It's crazy that only a celebrity can think of something dumb shit like that. Especially one of Demi Lovato. She isn't known to be always the smartest person on the block. But it's like, really? Extraterrestrials who don't even know we exist, or even if they do, they just keep watching us, think that a term is offensive. It's like when, there's a whole meme where it's like, it's like where the guy's like yelling at the girl, and she's like where girls are just like, oh no, this joke is, offensive to minorities. And then the minorities are just like, I find that funny. Then the meme goes on yelling at one of the girls, and they're like, today we're offended today. And that's what it is. It's, being offended on someone else's behalf. It's like, no, bitch. Like, if aliens are offended about them calling aliens, then they will let us know. Don't be offended on someone else's behalf. That's like the worst thing you can do. It's like, when like someone makes like a minority joke or something, and like it's like the super like, progressive like white liberals are just like, no, like, this is offensive, don't say that at all, no, don't, like, it's like, but then like you talk to the actual minorities and they're like, yeah, this is a pretty funny joke. It's like, it's almost like reverse like colonialism in a sense, right? It's like back in the day you were, enforcing, your culture, your weaponry, your seed onto those, who you conquered. Now in this day and age, you're getting offended on our behalf for stuff that we acknowledge is pretty funny. So clearly it's changed, but it's almost like in reverse. And it's just so stupid, dude. Don't get offended on someone else's behalf. If someone else is offended, then it's their responsibility to speak up and say, hey, this is offensive. And honestly, the other person on the other end can just be like, yo, I don't give a shit. Like, so what if it's offensive? Like, come on now. But yeah, I think that's my opinion. Like, ultimately, there's a large disconnect based on the amount of money, your economic position, which leads into the people that you're surrounded by, which leads into your, political affiliation, which leads into your, your worldview overall. Because you can think about these things when you're rich, but when you're just working, you're not thinking about, systematic racism. You're not thinking about being offended that you call them, but people like us have a name for aliens, for extraterrestrial people. Like, we're just trying to get to our next paycheck so you can figure out what to do, pay bills, see if we can get a house if we could, move out. I don't know. But on that topic, let's talk about some other really stupid stuff. Let's talk about that cringe vaccine dance. So Stephen Colbert did this vaccine dance, and I'll just be honest with you. With the exception of Conan O'Brien, recently, the American late night talk show hosts are all the same. They're all the same. Like, they all turn political, and they're just pushing out a message, a progressive message too. Maybe I might even exclude Bill Maher. I mean, Bill Maher's also pretty freaking political, but at least he's not like on the same political aisle, but he's still political. So I'll probably put him in the same, casting as all the other American talk show hosts. It's like every time they push out a message, a sort of progressive message, they're also pushing out a moral statement too. And it's like, nobody gives a fuck about your moral statements, right? Like, when Jimmy Kimmel goes up there and starts, having these crocodile tears about crying about, how people are getting shot, we should take away all the guns. It's like, no one's buying that. Nobody gives a shit about your moral high ground. You don't, because you're living a different reality. You don't experience the same things that the average person does. So don't go up there and start pretending to cry, and don't go up there and say that your position is better than everyone else's, and it's on a moral level, right? It's on a different moral level. I'm more superior to you because I believe in these progressive values. You're just a bigot because you don't. And this is kind of like the things that I get, from late night talk show hosts, which is why I just completely turn them off. It's only when I just see clips that I somewhat watch them. And I think the worst one is like Jimmy Kimmel, man. Like when Trump was the president for about 4 years, every single day, like 5 days a week, Jimmy Kimmel would just upload a segment dedicated to Trump. Think about it this way. For 4 years, you dedicated a segment, one for every single weekday, about one guy. Dude, don't you think that's enough? Don't you think that's a bit too much? He was their obsession. These political late night talk show hosts, they're all in the same boat, and it was just their bread and butter. Like, I'm just gonna go through right now, like Jimmy Kimmel's YouTube list, and it's just nuts. It's just so much stuff on it. Like, it seems like the list just never ends, man. And it's all these late night talk show hosts were the same. Everything was about Trump, bashing Trump every single day, 5 days a week. And don't get me wrong, I'm not a Trump supporter. I'm not any of that. It's just, at the end of the day, it's the same. It really was the same. And then you wonder why shows like Lex Friedman, Tim Dillon, Flagrant 2 with Akash, Joe Rogan, No Jumper, Fresh and Fit are getting so much more traction. Why does Joe Rogan in 2019 have 200 million monthly downloads? And you know what? We may talk about, how capitalism has affected the news and how, it's incentivizes, biases towards one side of the political spectrum or another side of the political spectrum so that you cater towards your audience, which makes you more money. But I think the market's also speaking again. And I think the answer is right there. The demand for this political short interviews is fading away. These late night talk show hosts are honestly, in my opinion, they're irrelevant, right? They're slowly becoming irrelevant, and I think celebrities are becoming irrelevant too. Back when the pandemic started, the celebrities sent out this really cringe video, and right in the beginning of the pandemic, Gal Gadot in her freaking mansion was singing a song, right? And just the amount of dislikes that is showed on the video showcase that they were disconnected. They didn't understand the severity of this pandemic. They didn't have a job to lose. They were there, isolated in their big-ass mansion, while a lot of people are isolated in small apartments or in their house with 20 people. It's like, this goes to show you that if nobody paid attention to celebrities, they would crumble like rocks. And that's why they have to do this dumb stunt to appeal to the public. Like, no, don't do that. You're not facing the same problems we are. You have your mansion, you have your millions of dollars to live off of. Don't come in and pretend like you're one of us. No, you're not. You're there. You're paid to look good and act. Play someone else's character. Man, back to Stephen Colbert. Like, just look at the audience when he does the vaccine dance. Can you just see around? Everyone's old. Everyone's old. Like, they're so old they don't know how to change the channel on the thing. They're so old that they don't want to, they don't know any other forms of entertainment. So these late night shows are their news. It's like, watching The View, right? It's like, it's like, these like middle-aged, housewives who don't work, who are at home, at 2 o'clock in the afternoon or 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I don't know when the show actually starts, and they just watch The View, and that's when they get all their, their news is from these ultra rich, housewives or women, right, about politics and global issues and stuff like that. And if you want to get all virtue signaling and moral about this thing, Stephen Colbert was so near this lady that he was holding hands with her, dancing around, and yelling the word vaccine. You realize that you can still spread this virus even though you have a vaccine, right? So what are you doing? Like, if you're gonna be about stopping the spread, killing off the virus, quote unquote, then, because it's here to stay. You can't kill it off. If you're about to do that, don't do something as dumb as that, right? Don't be at least try your best not to be a contradiction, right? That's all it is. And if the goal was for the dance to come off as cringe, then it did its job. But what's that? What's the point in that? Honestly, what's the point in that? If you want to do an anti vaccine propaganda, this is it. If you're trying to convince other people to get the vaccine, then this dance is not it. But honestly, I'm just very happy overall. I think this is a good sign. This is a very good sign that a lot of these smaller platforms that are on YouTube, that are on Spotify, they're coming out of the woodwork, and I think this is great. And I think that the smaller platforms come out and promote their own news. They're independent. They're free of their biases. They can talk about whatever they want. I think that's better than what we have right now, which is big, gigantic dinosaur companies who are run by dinosaur CEOs. I think if those died out and these smaller platforms emerge where it's longer, nuanced conversations, stories that are free of any sort of political bias, and they're just there to figure out the truth, then I think that's better. I think that's best. I think there's positive in all this. And that's where I leave it at that. So thank you so much for listening, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Support the Patreon, by the way. The link is in the description below if you want to help me out. And once again, I'll try my best to keep producing the show. I do plan to go back to boxing pretty soon, so expect hopefully some content about that. And like I said, I'll catch you in the next one.